The Man Who Refused Enlightenment by David Russo. Chapter 1. The Last Door. They told him there would be a door. Not a physical one. No wood, no hinge, but a moment so complete it felt architectural. A threshold inside the mind where effort ended and arrival began. Where the self, long carried like a burden, could finally be set down. For years, he had prepared. He sat until his legs went numb and sensation dissolved into sound. He watched thoughts rise and fall until they lost their urgency. He learned to name pain without flinching, to greet fear without obedience. Desire thinned. Identity softened. Others praised his discipline. Some followed him. Some resented him. Many stopped short, satisfied with glimpses, visions of light, a sudden peace, the intoxicating sense of being more than a person. He did not stop. He wanted the end of seeking itself. And then, one evening, without warning, the world changed its texture. The air felt thinner, as if meaning had been drained from it. His breath continued, but it no longer felt owned. The sound of wind outside his window did not arrive to him. It passed through him. And there it was. The door. Not seen, but known. A presence so gentle it almost escaped notice. No command. No voice. Just the quiet understanding that if he leaned forward, if he surrendered even the idea of standing, everything would open. He felt it immediately. Unity. Not as a concept, but as a condition. No center. No edge. No distance between thought and world. Peace waited there. Perfect peace. The kind that does not tremble. The kind that does not remember. His body softened. Tears formed without emotion. The final effort dissolved. And then, unexpectedly, something else arose. A hesitation. It was not fear. Fear had long since lost its grip on him. It was reluctance. He noticed how complete the offer was. How final. To step through meant no longer needing to choose. No longer needing to prefer. No longer needing to fail. And suddenly, he felt the weight of things he had not finished. A laugh he still wanted to earn. A mistake he had not yet forgiven. The strange dignity of hunger. The heat of anger when something mattered. He realized that enlightenment asked for more than suffering. It asked for participation to end. The door did not rush him. It waited with infinite patience, certain of its inevitability. But he was still breathing. Still someone. Still able to say yes or not yet. And in that quiet, suspended moment, the man made a decision no one had warned him was possible. He stayed. The world thickened again. Sound returned with edges. His breath came back into his chest, heavy and imperfect. The door did not slam. It simply remained open behind him. And for the first time since beginning the path, the man felt something almost forbidden. Choice. Chapter 2. Witnesses. They noticed before he spoke. The elders sat in a half circle, their posture relaxed in the way of people who believed they had already arrived. Their faces carried the stillness of long practice. Eyes clear, expressions softened by acceptance. They had seen many return from the threshold. They were waiting for the change. But when the man entered the room, something felt unfinished. He bowed, as custom required. His movements were respectful, but not emptied of intention. When he straightened, his gaze met theirs directly, steady, unpolished, awake. One of the elders leaned forward. "Did you reach the final stage?" she asked. "Yes," he said. No embellishment. No tremor. And the door. He paused. Not for drama, but to choose accuracy. I saw it. A subtle shift moved through the room. A tightening, barely visible. They had expected joy by now. Relief. Gratitude. "And did you pass through?" another asked. No. The silence that followed was not calm. It was the kind of silence that searches for correction. A few elders exchanged glances. One smiled gently, the way adults do when a child misunderstands a lesson. "Perhaps you are being modest," he said. Language can fail at that stage. The man shook his head. I understood clearly. That unsettled them. Failure they could accommodate. Confusion they could repair. But clarity paired with refusal had no category. One elder folded her hands. "What stopped you?" The man considered the question. He could speak of unity, of the way the self loosens like a knot soaked in water. He could describe peace so complete it erased the need to describe. Instead, he said, "I wanted to remain." The room cooled. Remain what? They did not ask aloud. The word human hovered uncomfortably between them. "You trained for years," someone said carefully. "You endured pain. You released attachment." "Yes," he replied. and I was offered release from choosing. A long pause. That is freedom, the elders said. It is an ending, the man answered. The elders did not argue, but something closed. Their expressions remained kind, yet distant, as if he had stepped backward off a shared map. They conferred quietly. Terms were used, incomplete, unresolved, premature descent. The man listened without defense. When they dismissed him, he bowed again. As he left, he noticed something that stayed with him. Those who had crossed fully did not look toward him. Their gaze floated past, wide and inclusive, but curiously unreachable, like eyes trained on a horizon that did not require return. Outside, the world waited. The ground felt solid under his feet. Wind pressed against his face with intention. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed too loudly. As he walked away from the hall, the man realized the truth of his new position. He had not failed. He had been witnessed and found unacceptable. And still he walked on. Chapter 3. The Weight of Hands. He did not return to the mountains. Instead, he walked down until the air grew heavier and the path softened into roads shaped by use. Stone gave way to dust. Silence gave way to overlapping sounds that refused to resolve into meaning. The town did not greet him. It went on breathing without notice. Carts rattled over uneven ground. Vendors argued over coins. Somewhere, a child cried, not in pain, but in protest. The sound struck him harder than any bell ever had. He felt exposed. In the quiet places of practice, awareness had been clean, almost surgical. Here it was messy. Attention caught on everything. Smells layered themselves without permission, fruit turning sweet, sweat turning sharp, the faint smoke of cooking fires clinging to cloth. His mind named patterns automatically. Causes, conditions, impermanence. He saw the threads clearly. And still, his body reacted. When a man shoved past him without apology, heat rose in his chest before he could soften it. When hunger came, it did not dissolve into observation. It demanded. He almost laughed. This was what he had chosen. He found work repairing things. At first, it was small, loose hinges, cracked bowls, a chair that leaned because one leg remembered damage the others had forgotten. People watched him with polite suspicion. He worked quietly, asked little. The tools surprised him. A hammer did not care about insight. Wood resisted whether one was enlightened or not. Nails bent when struck at the wrong angle. Mistakes mattered. His hands grew sore. Blisters formed and broke. At night, his body ached with the slow, honest pain of effort. And something unexpected happened. He slept deeply, not the floating rest of meditation, but the heavy, ungraceful sleep of someone spent. He dreamed of ordinary things, lost items, unfinished conversations, faces he could not name. In the mornings, he woke with weight in his limbs and direction in his thoughts. One afternoon, as he worked, a woman watched him struggle with a warped doorframe. "You're forcing it," she said. He paused, irritated before grateful. Then he adjusted his angle. The wood yielded. She nodded once and walked away. The exchange stayed with him. Here, understanding arrived through correction, through contact, through failure observed and revised. As days passed, he noticed something subtle. His awareness had not diminished. If anything, it had thickened. He still sensed the quiet behind things, but now it shared space with effort, preference, fatigue. Presence was no longer weightless. It carried consequence. He understood then what the door had not offered him. Touch. To be untouched by suffering was also to be untouched by need. To float above error was to float above repair. That evening, as he washed dust from his hands, he watched the water run dark, then clear. The world did not dissolve. It held. And for the first time since turning back, he felt something settle into place. He had chosen wait. And wait, he realized, was how things stayed real. Chapter 4. Those who ascended. They returned changed. Not all at once, but gradually, one by one, like lanterns appearing on a distant ridge. Word traveled ahead of them, carried by reverent voices and careful exaggeration. Each had reached the final threshold. Each had stepped through. The town prepared itself. When the first arrived, people gathered instinctively. No announcement had been made, yet everyone knew. The air around her seemed thinner, quieter. She walked as though nothing could resist her, not because she pushed, but because she no longer needed to. Her eyes were wide and gentle. Her smile rested easily, unburdened by expectation. People bowed. She spoke of unity. of how effort falls away like a discarded coat, of how suffering dissolves when there is no one left to suffer. Her words settled over the crowd like warm ash. The man stood at the edge and listened. Others followed, men and women he had once practiced beside. Some he had admired, some he had envied. All of them carried the same quality now, a stillness so complete it erased urgency. They were kind. They listened when people spoke. They touched shoulders lightly. They offered reassurance without conditions. And yet, when someone wept, they did not move closer. When anger flared in the crowd, they named it illusion. When injustice was described, they spoke of balance beyond appearances. Their compassion was vast. It was also distant. The man noticed something that unsettled him. None of them seemed tired. No one struggled to find words. No one hesitated before answering. Their responses arrived already polished, already resolved. People praised them for this. "Look how peaceful," they said. "Look how free." Someone eventually asked about the man who had turned back. The ascended smiled softly. "He was close," one said. "Very close," another agreed. "But attachment can be subtle." The man did not interrupt. He continued repairing doors and mending tools while the town gathered around its new teachers. He listened as they described him kindly, as one might describe a talented student who refused graduation. Some days, doubt crept in. Watching them, he felt the ache of comparison. Their serenity was undeniable. Their lives appeared untouched by friction. He wondered if he had mistaken fear for choice. But then, a boy ran through the crowd and collided with one of the ascended. The boy apologized, flustered. The teacher smiled, but did not steady him. The man reached out instead. The boy's weight was real in his hands, solid, demanding attention. Later that evening, as lanterns flickered and people drifted home, the man passed by the ascended sitting together in quiet harmony. They did not look up, not because they rejected him, but because nothing called them. He understood then. They had gone somewhere beautiful. He had stayed somewhere unfinished. And as he walked back through the dark, hands aching, heart unguarded, he realized something with unexpected calm. He did not want to be above the world. He wanted to be needed by it. Chapter 5. The Fracture. It happened at night. No preparation, no posture, no discipline summoned to meet it. He woke from sleep with the sensation that the room had grown larger, walls receding, ceiling lifting away from meaning. His breath stilled on its own, not held, just unnecessary. The door returned, not as memory, but as presence. It opened inside him, effortlessly. The self loosened. The familiar ache of being someone began to dissolve, thread by thread. There was no resistance at first, only relief. The town, the tools, the weight of hands, all of it thinned. The quiet behind things swelled forward, vast and forgiving. Peace arrived, perfect, impersonal, unquestionable. For a moment, he leaned toward it. And then something caught. A fracture, not in the vision, but in him. He felt, with sudden sharpness, what would be lost. Not as concept, but as absence. The texture of effort. The dignity of choosing badly and repairing it. The heat of anger when something mattered enough to burn. He realized something that startled him with its simplicity. This peace required consent. Not once, but forever. To accept it was to agree never to argue with reality again. Never to push back. Never to prefer one outcome over another. He thought of the boy's weight in his hands. Of the warped doorframe that required force at the right angle. Of hunger that demanded attention, not observation. He felt a strange, radical emotion rise. Defiance. Not against peace, but against erasure. He did not reject the vision. He did not deny its truth. He declined its permanence. The fracture widened, not violently, but decisively. Awareness folded back into body. Breath returned with weight. The room shrank to human size. The door did not vanish. It stayed open, luminous and patient. He turned away from it while fully awake. His heart pounded. His hands shook, not from fear, but from the strain of choosing gravity over release. When the moment passed, exhaustion flooded him. He lay still, listening to his own imperfect breathing. By morning, the town sounded the same. Carts rattled. Voices argued. Life continued without acknowledgement of what had nearly ended. But he knew. Something had shifted. He understood now that enlightenment was not a prize waiting at the end of effort. It was an offer, and offers could be refused. As he rose and prepared for the day, he felt no regret, only clarity sharpened by cost. He would not float above the world. He would meet it. Again, and again, and again. Chapter 6. The Cost. Choosing to remain did not make life kinder. If anything, it sharpened it. Without transcendence to soften the edges, experience arrived fully. Grief did not dissolve into perspective. It stayed and asked to be carried. Regret did not bow to understanding. It lingered, heavy and specific. The man learned this slowly. A friend he had worked beside fell ill and did not recover. There was no lesson hidden in the timing, no symmetry to admire. The absence was plain and unredeemed. He stood at the edge of the grave and felt the old reflex rise, to widen awareness, to step back from the pain and watch it thin. He did not. He stayed where he was. The weight of loss pressed into his chest, solid and undeniable. He let it. His hands trembled. His throat tightened. He breathed anyway. Later, alone, doubt visited him. It spoke quietly, reasonably. You could have been free of this. You saw the door. You knew the way out. Some nights, he listened. His body ached more now. Age crept in without apology. Mistakes followed him longer than they used to. There were words he could not take back. Opportunities that closed without ceremony. He learned something uncomfortable. Awareness did not protect him from consequence, but it did allow him to meet consequence honestly. In the mornings, he woke with tasks waiting. Things undone. People who expected him to show up imperfectly, not serenely. And there was something else, something small but persistent. Meaning. Not the sweeping kind promised by unity, but the narrow, demanding kind that emerged from responsibility. From being the one who stayed late. The one who apologized first. The one whose presence mattered because it was not guaranteed. He noticed how often the ascended were praised for their peace. No one asked them to decide anything difficult. No one leaned on them in crisis. They were admired, but rarely required. One evening, after a long day of work, the man sat alone and let exhaustion settle into his bones. His mind wandered, not toward visions, but toward faces, voices, conversations that needed care. He understood then what the cost truly was. Not pain, but involvement. To remain human was to accept that you could not step away when things became complicated, that you would be implicated, that your presence would change outcomes, for better or worse. And strangely, this knowledge did not crush him. It steadied him. He was not free from suffering. He was free to respond to it. As night fell, he felt no longing for escape, only a quiet resolve to wake again and choose, once more, to stay. Chapter 7. A different teaching. They did not come looking for a teacher. They came because he stayed. At first, it was practical. Someone needed help repairing a roof. Someone else asked him to watch a child for an afternoon. He was nearby. He was reliable. He did not disappear into stillness when things became inconvenient. Over time, people lingered. They asked questions without ceremony, while he worked, while they walked, while the day unfolded around them. You reached the end, didn't you? One asked. Yes, he said. And you turned back? Yes. There was always a pause after that. Disappointment, usually. Sometimes confusion. Occasionally relief. What did you see? They asked. He thought carefully before answering. Everything, he said. And I chose to keep something. What? The ability to be wrong. That unsettled them more than any mystical description could have. They expected teachings, steps, practices, instructions for ascent. He offered none. When pressed, he did not redirect them inward or upward. He asked instead, what are you avoiding? What would it cost you to stay? Who needs you imperfect? Some people left quickly. They were not offended, just uninterested. They wanted peace without negotiation. Others returned. They sat with him while he worked, watching his hands fail and adjust. They noticed how he paused before speaking, not to access wisdom, but to choose care. One afternoon, a woman confessed that she feared stillness, that if she stopped striving, nothing meaningful would remain. The old teachings would have named that fear illusion. He did not. He said, then don't stop yet. She cried, not from release, but from permission. Word spread quietly. Not that he was enlightened, but that he was honest. Those who came expecting elevation found themselves grounded instead. He did not lift them above their lives. He pointed back to them. He told no one to abandon the path. He told no one to follow his. The door is real, he said when asked. So is the world. Some called him a heretic. Others, a comfort. Most could not decide what he was. That suited him. He noticed that people left his presence heavier, but steadier. less certain, but more awake to consequence. He watched them walk away carrying their lives more deliberately. And sometimes, when the evening light thinned and the day loosened its grip, he wondered if this slow exchange of responsibility was its own kind of awakening. Not the kind that ends seeking, but the kind that teaches you what you are willing to seek for. He returned to his work, hands marked, breath uneven, attention present. He had not become a guide. He had become an example of staying. Chapter 8. The World Decides. History is impatient. It does not wait for nuance. It does not linger over choice. It catalogs results. It celebrates ascension. It writes footnotes for refusal. The man became one of those footnotes. Newspapers, scribes, and wandering storytellers described the ascended. How they had stepped through the final door, how they had vanished into unity, how suffering no longer touched them. Praise was easy, immediate, unquestioned. They were elevated into the sky before the ink was dry. And then there was him. Failed to transcend, one pamphlet read. Rejected by the ultimate vision, said another. A cautionary tale, whispered an older voice, of ambition unfulfilled. He did not read these things. He heard them from afar, but they carried no bite. They were the world's shorthand, trying to reduce a choice to a verdict, trying to make refusal look like error. The world prefers absolutes. Either you rise or you fall. Either you accept or you reject. Nuance makes readers uncomfortable. It demands attention, and attention takes energy. Most people skim past. He had chosen refusal. And yet, he continued. Morning light found him repairing a fence. Noon brought a roof to mend. Evening brought the quiet satisfaction of a child guided through a stubborn problem. These were small, tactile victories, and the world overlooked them entirely. But in the overlooked, he found depth. He noticed the subtle transformations. A neighbor learning to bend the wood just so. A child discovering that mistakes can be corrected without shame. A friend realizing the power of witnessing, not judging. These moments did not make headlines. They made lives. For the first time, he understood the contrast fully. The ascended were celebrated for being above consequence. He was unnoticed for staying within it. Some nights, he imagined their eyes, wide, serene, untouched by error. He felt no envy. He understood something subtle. They had escaped friction. He had embraced it. They were admired for peace. He was honored by presence. Not visible, not proclaimed, but real. And that mattered. He had not failed. The world could write whatever it wanted. He would continue choosing hands, work, accountability, relationships, the slow rhythm of living as fully human. That was his freedom. Not freedom from suffering, but freedom to respond to it. On a quiet evening, as lanterns swung gently in the breeze, he walked past the town square. Children laughed, dogs barked, and merchants argued. The world turned as it always had. And he, weighted by responsibility, choice, and imperfection, was entirely awake. He realized something radical. To remain is not to fail. To refuse transcendence is not to lose. It is to be fully present where it matters most. The world may decide what it will. He had already decided what counted. And that, in the end, was enough. Chapter 9. Near the end. Aging arrived without ceremony. There were no warnings or dramatic collapses. Only small signals. A tightening along his back, soreness settling into his fingers, the way dusk seemed to stretch longer across the road. Time, once forgiving, now leaned in close, firm, and undeniable. And then, one evening, it appeared again. The door. No sound marked its arrival. No voices, no light show, no announcement of importance. Only the familiar presence, calm, unhurried, unchanged. Open not as an invitation, but as a certainty. This time, he did not waver. The vision was unmistakable. Complete stillness, perfect harmony, release from all burden. What lay beyond shimmered, vast, seamless, untouched by resistance. And yet he smiled, because at last he understood what had always been true, even before he had the words for it. He had chosen life, not because it was gentle, not because it was fair or simple or rewarding. He had chosen it for its fractures, its effort, its mistakes, and its consequences. He had chosen mornings that demanded something of him, days that bruised, and nights that tested his resolve. He did not cross the threshold, not out of fear, nor doubt, nor refusal, but because his work here was complete. This decision carried no drama. It was steady, intentional, and resolved. He stepped back and felt the world return in full detail. Rough earth beneath his soles, distant laughter carried on the air, wind pressing against his skin, the dull throb in his joints, the weight in his limbs. Nothing was insignificant. Every sensation counted. Every choice held meaning. And something settled clearly within him. Enlightenment had never meant leaving. It had meant seeing. Seeing clearly enough to choose, again and again. Awareness was not an escape. It was a way of standing fully inside the moment. And he had done that. Earnestly, imperfectly, completely. In his last years, he sought no recognition. He wanted no monuments, no retellings, no reverence. What he wanted was presence, his own, and that of the people who crossed his path. At times, he would sit in silence, listening to the quiet rhythm of the world, and sense the door behind him. Still open, still waiting, unchanging. He would acknowledge it with a gentle nod, not resistance, not sorrow, but understanding. I saw it, and I chose to remain, because remaining was the final courage. And within that still choice, he found a peace the door could not give him. The peace of being entirely here, entirely human, entirely awake. The world moved forward, and so did he. Each breath, each step, each flawed effort became proof of choice. Not escape, not elevation, not flawlessness, but living. And that was enough. Chapter 10, What Remains. Long after, people debated him. Some said enlightenment was the highest goal. Others whispered that perhaps awakening is not assent at all, but consent, choosing fully, moment by moment, to inhabit a life that does not end in perfection. They told stories about the man who refused. Some painted him as a cautionary tale, a failed seeker who could not release himself. Others framed him as a mystery, a figure whose courage was invisible to those who measured success only by transcendence. He cared little for stories. He cared only for presence, the weight of hands, the tangibility of effort, the quiet dignity of being needed, of making mistakes, of staying. He walked the same paths he had walked for decades. He repaired the same fences, mended the same doors, and held the same conversations that asked more of him than the world often thanked him for. And yet, in that very repetition, he found a strange kind of abundance, a life fully lived, fully human, fully awake. At times, he thought of the door. He remembered the invitation of infinite peace, the gentle dissolving of self. He felt no regret. The visions of unity and light remained vivid in memory, but they did not tempt him. They had their place beyond. He had his place here. He understood, finally, that to step through would have been surrender. To stay was an act of consent, to embrace friction, choice, error, grief, and love in their rawest forms. And perhaps that was the truest courage of all. When children ran past him laughing, when neighbors argued over petty mistakes, when the wind pressed against his face, he felt the vividness of life pressing back. He could not escape it. He did not want to. He had discovered that the world, with all its imperfection, was richer for engagement than for detachment. That to be awake in the middle of consequence, messy, demanding, uncertain, was a gift the ascended could not fully understand. In his final years, he did not chase visions. He did not seek applause. He did not hope for recognition. He simply chose. Every act of patience, every corrected mistake, every time he held a hand, told a story, or bore witness to suffering, he chose. And in that choice, a quiet truth emerged. Perhaps enlightenment is not a door to walk through. Perhaps it is a decision, repeated until it becomes a life fully lived. He sat one evening as the sun dipped low, and he listened to the world around him, the laughter, the clatter, the whispers of wind in the trees. The door shimmered faintly behind him, open as ever. And he nodded, with no words needed. I saw it. I chose. I stayed. And the world continued. And so did he. Not elevated. Not immortal. Not perfect. Simply awake. And that was enough. Conclusion. The door, revisited. He was never opposed to enlightenment. What he resisted was leaving before he had lived. He wanted to know what it meant to be human without an exit in his back pocket. To choose responsibility, love, effort, and error while they still mattered. To feel the full texture of a life that could not be bypassed by insight alone. So he stayed. Years passed. Work was done. Hands grew tired. Conversations found their endings. The world asked less of him, not because it had become easier, but because he had met it fully. And when there was nothing left unfinished, no roles left to fill, no lives depending on his particular presence, the door appeared once more. It was the same door, the same peace, the same boundless recognition. This time, he did not hesitate. He stepped forward freely, not as an escape from life, but as its completion. And in that crossing, nothing he loved was lost. The world was not rejected. Humanity was not erased. Only suffering ended, because there was no longer anything left to resist. He had lived first. And because of that, he could finally let go.